Good morning from Capone Cabin. Our friend Jess at Roots and Refuge Farm asked everybody to be a raindrop, meaning to fill an Olympic sized pool, she said, with change if we all did one thing. And I she got a hold, if you watch her videos, she got a hold of contaminated soil, which killed her crops. I am extremely sorry this happened to her. But on the other hand, she's got a big platform. Things happen for a reason. And this happening to her, she can spread the word to more people than just the average Joe. So I'm glad that happened um, for that reason. My husband reminded me of a quote by Mark Twain. It's easier to fool a person than it is to convince them they've been fooled. Very true. This soil contamination, chemical problem is nothing new at all. We don't want to be torch carriers or flag bearers for this, do we?
Not at all.
We have already spent decades um, and have our battle scars from doing this, from trying to warn people or trying to get people to at least research for themselves. And you take a lot of heat for that, career wise, everything wise, don't you?
Certainly do.
Um, so the whole thing, my husband brought up a word yesterday because we talked about this video before doing it. At first, I didn't want to do it. Boots and Bounty had put out a call for people to upload this type of video. I had actually contacted her and said, I can't do this. But I did change my mind because this subject is very close to both of our home. My husband, as a retired doctor, me, oh God, spending 15 years in the legal field fighting this, you know, but he brought up a word, indoctrination, right?
Yep. Hmm.
People are indoctrinated to
Right.
believe the government.
Right. That's what we're taught in schools, and uh, when we're young and impressionable, uh, these things are always presented to make sense.
Right. So when you're growing up and you see that perfect tomato in the store,
Yeah.
you're indoctrinated to think that's what a tomato should look like,
Correct.
when that's not the case at all. And I see this over and over and over with people believing, well, the government tells you this for your own good. You know, recently there are a lot of cases of early death from people who rolled up their sleeve to get the jab. Not going to go deep into that, but the government told them it was safe, just like the chemicals that you put on crops, um, just like the chemicals you put in your body, the pharmaceutical companies.
Right. Back to indoctrination. I ask people or tell people, you've been brainwashed, and nobody really likes to hear that. No one wants to believe that. And I will ask them, how do you spell relief? And those who are over 40, typically the first thing that pops into their head is ROLAIDS. And while it's a commercial and that may be humorous to a certain degree, that's what brainwashing is. When these companies are endlessly putting these commercials out. It is to condition you, indoctrinate you, brainwash you, whatever word
You want to use?
you want to use. It's telling you this is how you get relief. Now, that's just one simple example, but this is where we're headed with this video, is to question everything, do your research. Uh, don't take our word.
Mm-mm.
There's a lot out there, some of it good, some of it not so good, but make your own choices. Go ahead, hon.
You know, the whole homesteading community, since you're mostly growing your own food for your own sustainability, which is really important, all this comes into play. Because if you're going to be self sustaining, you need to know what can affect your personal food chain. This is your personal food chain. You have to be very, very careful of the new wave aftershave, all the best technologies and everything. People often ask us as far as like even prepping. I don't really do prepper videos. There's a lot of them already out there, great channels. I don't like the fear mongering, but we have a really simple breakdown of how you think you're prepared for something. Is
Sure.
We're Revolutionary War reenactors. So if you really want to know, like on that subject, how do I know if I'm prepared? And this goes hand in hand with gardening, with chemicals, with everything, because they didn't have that back then. So how we kind of use as a guideline to how prepared we are, go back to the 1700s. Let's say 1750,
Yeah.
1760.
Yeah.
Have a hand tool for every one of your power tools. They didn't have solar or propane or, John Deere,
Yeah.
Kubota tractors.
Yeah.
So we even have a two-man saw.
Yes.
We don't have
Mm-hmm.
oil for a chainsaw
Mm-hmm.
because you can't get it. We can still cut a tree down
Yeah.
without power. We don't need solar. We don't need propane. If the grid went down now, it would take us a what 5 minutes to go. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Get
Pretty
out
much.
all our gear. People, you know, and it's the younger generation from us. We're senior citizens, so it's us really, 40 and below. Would you
Yeah.
say 40 and below?
Yeah.
The indoctrination, like it's even happening now with the homesteading, or just not even homesteading. You need solar. If
Yeah.
something happens and the grid goes down, you gotta have solar. What happens if you need a part? What happens if you can't get
Yeah.
a battery? So
Mm-hmm.
you need to, we know the really old ways, but those are the ways that are basically time tested,
Sure.
like the canning community. And I'm not going deep into canning because every time I do, it creates a little bit of drama. So I'm not going there. But his mother canned sauce for
40 years.
40 years. And now they're saying, the government is saying, unless it's in this book that we put out, it's not safe. You got to follow our recipe because it's safe. That's indoctrination. I'm sure your mom's recipe after 40 years was pretty kitchen tested.
Yeah, I would say so. None of her offspring or her husband suffered any illness or death from it.
No. So, use your head. And a lot of people, they don't mention, and this goes along with believing the government, just like your crops. This chemical you will have no bugs, no parasites, no worms. You'll get bumper crops every year. This is a best thing. That's just like things like listening to the government book on canning. My husband can tell you certain things die at certain temperatures,
Yes.
cannot live past a certain temperature. So if you're heating your food and pressure canning that food to that temperature, can it live?
No.
No. So if you have a can on your shelf that's burst or the seal is ruptured and it looks funky and you open it and
Mel's.
it's smelly and rotten, that's a pretty good indicator that you've had a failure somewhere along your line. But the reason the government tells you these things, like only follow the book, lawsuits. It's called liability. And I've heard several people say the government would, and then these are the younger crowd, and I don't fault you for it. It's indoctrination. It goes back to that indoctrination. The government wouldn't tell you anything that is not in your best interest. Oh boy.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Um, that mindset is what you need to question. You need to question just because it's the government, question it.
Right. You know, we've lived a relatively long time and have seen uh, the alphabet uh, organizations, FDA, whatnot, come out
Oops,
and tell you things
that truck is going to over. Hold on, we got a truck. Sorry. Louder.
that things are safe. We have tested all this. And even before I was cognizant of all these things, when I was a child born, uh, thalidomide was prescribed regularly to people. We're talking the 1950s, early 60s, and horrible defects with babies with no arms and legs and things like that. Yet that was approved, and that's just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of instances where a agency who's there to protect us, you, uh, were wrong. Now, was it intentional? No, of course not. It's never intentional. But follow the money. The number one contributor to our politicians is the pharmaceutical industry, more so than anything else by triple,
Oh,
if
yeah.
I recall
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And, you know, uh, money begats corruption. So this is why we are encouraging you to research these things. If you're on medicines, you know, certainly don't get off them because of us. We're not telling you to do that, but do your research. Uh, be careful of your medical doctors. As individuals, they're nice people. Uh, they don't intend to hurt anybody, but they have student loans, they have bills to pay, and they don't know anything else but the field they're in. And we'll get into corporate buyout. Another truck going by, sorry. And your your family doctors, your medical doctors, are there any independents left? Very, very, very few here in our communities. We can only think of one.
Yeah.
And that's out of hundreds and hundreds of doctors. They've all sold their practices to corporations. Now, these corporations are subsidized by the pharmaceutical industry. Look at your hospital, your local hospital. Who built that building? Do any of them not have a pharmacy inside of them? And is that pharmacy the same company that built the hospital? These are things to look into. Go ahead, Dave.
Follow the money, but it was something that you said, and unfortunately, because of how my brain works, it went right out of my head. Because you just said it, and I wanted to touch on it. You know, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies own or are in partnership with the fertilizer companies. Bayer is one of the leading ones. They all have their hands in the pockets, but you know, the chemical companies, I spent 15 years of my career fighting big pharma only to get death threats. Didn't scare me, but you know, you get tired of it after a while when they, again, through indoctrination, where the schools the federal education was telling parents your child has ADD or ADHD. It needs a medication. We have the prescription for you. We even have, because some of the parents said, had gone back to the school and said they took their child to their own pediatrician, and the pediatrician did not agree. Schools were actually saying, it's okay, we have a list.
Hmm.
We have a list of doctors that will agree. Um, those drugs they prescribed your children, if you're not aware, pharmaceuticals is my background, and it's perfectly in conjunction with Mr. Capone's. Those drugs are a class 2 narcotic. So when they take a child off at 18, because those drugs were never FDA approved for the use in children, they were off, it's called an off label use. Of course, they started getting addicted to drugs because they were already indoctrinated on that. It's everything that your generation is believing through no fault really of their own.
No.
This is what you're being taught in school. TV commercials,
Hmm.
social media bombards you with these things. We get, and I take it humorously, but I get several comments from a lot younger people. Well, how do you know you're prepared? Well, how you say you've prepped. How do you know? How do you what do you think, you're an expert or something? We've trained with a highly intelligent group of people
Yeah.
who each brought something to the table in our training. Combat veterans,
Hmm.
a neurosurgeon, a nurse. My
Hmm.
husband is a doctor.
Farm,
Police,
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 farmers.
farmers. These people each brought something to the table. Training, just lightly was even when you get shot in the field, doing exercises, bringing that person back to triage, knowing how to use a chest seal, knowing how to do sutures, treating injuries in the field, how to sanitize your creek water when it's like the worst water you can get a hold of, but that's all you got.
Yep. Hmm.
So, as far as being knowledgeable, we don't make videos on that because, like I said, so many people are doing it.
Hmm.
We're battle weary. Like I said, we're tired. We now just concentrate on
Us.
us
And our family.
and our family, to making sure we're taken care of. We know what to do. But Jess's video touched me at such a level because my husband and I know, we've been around long enough to know what really goes on behind the scenes with this. Her load of contaminated soil, not just a drop in the pool, as she said, it's
Hmm.
a drop in the world. This has been going on for decades.
Yeah, just look at your roadside. You,
Yes.
you have your Department of Transportation uh, spraying the side of the road with chemicals to keep the grass from having to be cut so often or to keep bugs down, uh, all that. Now, those chemicals don't stay on the side of the road. They get leached into the ground, they go into your groundwater. That groundwater then is gone to your county or city water system and supposedly treated, and then you get it. And then they pump all sorts of things like chlorine and fluoride into this
Mm-hmm.
water, and that water now is what you're drinking, being making
Contaminated.
tea or Kool-Aid or
Oh,
cooking your food in.
I know something that you can elaborate on, or you can, put your 2 cents in too. Back to pharmaceuticals. If you have a septic system
Hmm.
and you are taking medication, and then you know how the septic system works, it goes into the tank, then it goes into the leach field.
Hmm.
Where do you think those chemicals don't break down
Yeah.
without treatment of a counteractive? Where do you think that's going? It's going into your ground.
Into your groundwater. Hmm.
It same way as the city water, right? If you
Sure.
take the if you
Hmm.
take the pill, if
Yep.
you take the
Hmm.
chemical goes to the city plant.
Yep. Hmm.
So God knows who's on what
Yeah.
is going right back into. So I'm not asking you, don't think, I don't know how to say that. I want them to change the world, but I don't want them to end up fried like we got fried, you know? And there's no way for us to protect you from that.
You know, this all comes back to politics, unfortunately.
I know.
And we don't really want to get into that.
Uh-uh.
But, you know, even in our state, we have people who've been there
I
for
know.
decades and decades, and they went in poor and they're filthy rich. And I'm not against rich people. I mean, both of us made lots of money in our younger years.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it brings you some happiness occasionally and temporarily. But with the politicians, you know, don't keep putting the same people back.
Amen.
And while they have that advantage to get reelected because they're there in these big war chests, you know, we're hoping your generations will, you know, get together and, you know, one of the suggestions, if you will, is a constitutional convention where all your generation from the different states say, you know, we want term limits on these people because the longer they're there, the more corrupt they get.
Right.
And, you know, maybe there's another solution that's the one that, you know, we both agree on that, you know, you have a term limit on the president,
Mm-hmm.
make it on the rest of them. Each of you take turns to go to local, state, and federal offices and do the things that's right for your children and grandchildren, you know, instead of yourselves, were what these people have done.
Right. We're just temporary caretakers
Yeah.
of everything around
Mm-hmm.
us, of this planet. We are just passing through in the blink of an eye,
Mm-hmm.
in the scope of time.
Sure. Sure.
We are just trying our best
Mm-hmm.
to at least teach, but not saying this is what we want you to do our way.
No.
My husband brought up, I said something about the way we used to study. If we wanted different opinions, we had to check out 8 different books if
Yeah.
we wanted 8 different sources. And he said, you know, nowadays, and he held his phone up, you got the Library of Congress right at your
That's it.
fingertips.
Yeah.
There is no reason that you cannot research. And I hear some people say, well, I don't have the time to do all that. Well, then you're not willing or ready to make any, then you just do you, and you just carry on. But
Yeah.
even the indoctrination of needing everything in a hurry, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the homesteading channels, and I'm sorry, and I hope I don't like lose half of my subscribers, but I got to be real. They see what we've maybe spent a lifetime working for.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go out and buy some land, finance it, put a house on it, finance it. Well, I got to have the general public or the powers that be at the moment say, I got to have a tractor. If I'm going to do this, I got to have that. And all you end up with is debt.
Yeah.
So that's not self sufficient.
No,
That's not, you're
because
dependent.
you're owned by somebody, be it a bank
Right.
or a governmental agency that loaned you the money, so you don't really own any of that.
No, we
You
are
know,
blessed to be debt free. This has all been paid for. But, you
mm-hmm.
know, we put in, even at our age, we can literally say blood, sweat, and tears
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
building this. I mean, we are not 20. And we were, as you've seen in previous videos, we were lifting the logs.
Yeah.
We were out there in the sun working until we had to stop, you know, we couldn't do any more that day.
Yeah. You know, uh, saving money up to purchase whatever it is you may need certainly is difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Our parents and ourselves, you know, we didn't just run out and buy things if we didn't have the money for it. You had to sacrifice somewhere. You know, you do have bills. You've got to pay your mortgage. You've got to buy food and pay your utility bills. And then most of us and most people have a little bit left over for entertainment purposes or whatever title you'd like to use for that. Well, instead of going to the movies or buying a little bit bigger TV, uh, instead of financing that, save the money for it
Absolutely.
first. And you'd be surprised at the end of a few months how much you actually save by
Mm-hmm.
not going out and being entertained one
Right.
way or another, and then purchase the items you need, be it a tractor
Mm-hmm.
or a second car or bigger
And you
TV
don't need
set,
it. How long has it been since we've had a TV? 5, 6 years?
something
We
like
don't
that.
miss it.
And
We don't have fancy phones, do we? We have
no,
pay as you go, the pay as you go, like the month.
mm-hmm.
Um, and our phones are paid for. We don't have any contract. You know, could we go buy? Could we go pay someone to finish all this?
Sure,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure. Could
mm-hmm.
we go buy a new? He has a 2000
Yeah,
Ford F
fine.
150. It's in awesome shape. But could we go buy everything brand new and buy a big tractor that would make our lives easier? A
Yeah,
trackhoe would make
we'd
our
have to
lives
finance
great.
it, and we just don't want to be beholden to
Uh-uh.
somebody taking it away if things hit the fan. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, you don't have to buy brand new, but certainly get
Right.
something that's going to last, be it a vehicle or equipment of some kind. The thing we've been purchasing, or I've been
Mm-hmm.
over the last year
Yeah.
specifically, is hand tools. And yeah, you can go to the store. I've showed my wife, we would need a particular tool, even a hand tool. Some of them run two to four, $500, but you can buy an old one at a flea market
Oh
that
yeah.
might need a little elbow grease to clean it up
Yeah.
for $20, and it does the
Absolutely.
exact same thing as the new one.
The old tools are still just as
They're
good.
just as good.
They don't reinvent the wheel, do they?
No, it might have a little rust on them
No.
and some dirt, things that uh, mineral spirits and a little sandpaper sometimes, a can of spray paint maybe,
It
make
does
it
the
look
job.
pretty, and it's all done again.
But don't be indoctrinated to think you've got to have
Um,
the new power tool,
right, or the new hand
the
tool, or
perfect vegetables. If you're growing your own food, it's for your own consumption. Do you really care if it's a perfect tomato?
yeah, it
I
is
mean,
pretty, but
it's pretty, but you don't need it.
yeah,
The whole generation, it's so much more than just as contaminated soil.
hmm
That's just like the tip of the iceberg. And I'm so
hmm
glad that she brought that tip of
yeah,
that iceberg to light, because now, instead of just taking that, doing your video and saying, okay, I'll watch my soil, it is so much deeper than soil.
yeah, and this gets back to, we're talking pharmaceuticals and chemical companies
Yeah.
and whatnot. Yeah, you can get a, what, 600-pound pumpkin with Miracle Grow or
Yeah, you
something
can. They're
ridiculous like
beautiful
that. That
vegetables.
is
They're
gorgeous.
beautiful.
But, when things get bad, where are you going to buy Miracle Grow from? It's not going to be
Or what are you
available.
putting in your body? You
Yeah,
know from
yeah, the
your
chemical.
profession how
hmm
many of these diseases and other things and
Are,
ailments
are tied back to that
are
stuff.
are tied back to, and there's the point. It came back in my head. Very important. It is about what they tell you, like, even if, okay, cut. I lost it again. And it's so important and it's so great.
Uh,
Okay. Go. And when you were talking about chemicals and science, like the thalidomide, and a lot of people, even in the canning thing, this is what I hear a lot: chemicals, pharmaceuticals, chemicals. Well, the science has changed. The science has changed. We know better now. Do you not think the science is gonna to not think that it's gonna change again? How many times have we heard eggs are good, eggs are bad, eggs are good, coffee's good, coffee's bad? The science is ever changing.
Right. There are certain things that are standard that have not changed. You know, one of the things I saw in my practice, people would fill out, what medicines are they on, and the average American household has 26, 27 different medicines in their medicine cabinet. And you wonder, how does this start? How does this happen? And somebody says, well, I have a
Hold
headache.
on. We have a jet.
Just came over. Oh,
Yeah, so you might have to speak louder so we can get over this jet. Just speak louder.
Yeah. So how does this occur? Well, somebody gets a headache and they reach in and or go buy a bottle of aspirin, whatever brand, and they take that. Now, why did you have a headache? Did your brain have a lack of aspirin in it? No, it didn't. There was something else going on. But they take the aspirin, and this may last for a little while, and then they start getting an upset stomach. And keep in mind, when you take an aspirin, it goes into your stomach, and it goes through your bloodstream, and some small percentage of that aspirin winds up in your brain to dull that ache. Now, the rest of it goes to every single part of your body. Now, your stomach was in perfect chemical alignment before the aspirin, and now you've added aspirin, and now there's an imbalance of chemicals in your stomach. So now you get tummy symptoms or some problem there. So then you reach in or go buy a bottle of Pepto-Bismol or whatever else you
Gotta
may
calm
find
the
there.
tummy.
Calm the tummy. And where does that chemical go? Well, a percentage of it stays in the stomach and neutralizes that area, but the rest of it gets into the bloodstream and goes to all the other parts of and other organs of your body that were in perfect chemical alignment, and now they're out of balance, and then you start getting urinary problems.
It's a chain reaction, but just like adding something to the soil.
Right. So this all ties back together, that when you get things that are unnatural and you put them in your garden, you put them in your soil, you put them in your body, you are changing a chemical composition that was in balance at some point. Now, we are not experts on everything or anything per se, but we have friends, and this is something else I'd like to bring up, is surrounding yourself with people who actually know these things, who maybe have an education in horticulture or an education in trees. We have a friend who has that, and we're planting a small orchard, and we got with him, and he checked our soil, and he's I'll call it a naturalist, that he's not going to go to the store and buy Miracle Grow as an example. Not picking on Miracle Grow.
Yeah, not him.
But he'll say, oh, you need calcium or you need nitrogen, but let's use natural calciums.
Coffee grounds, eggshells.
Coffee grounds and eggshells.
Exactly.
And use those things to supplement your soil, as opposed to something that was made in a factory.
Yeah. Then if you want to make a change, if you want to be that drop in the pool, as Jess put it, takes 50 million, or I can't remember how many drops she said to fill a pool. It's you can't just take the one thing, because everything, just like in your body, just like in society, everything is interconnected. Just like what you said about medication and where it goes. Everything is interconnected. So a lot of people say, when you brought up the thalidomide, just like, well, the science changes. And that is the number one rebuttal to everything. The science, that was back then. You can't use that example. It was back then. The science changed. Science is going to keep changing. Like I said, it's going to keep happening. That's why, and we're history fanatics for the old history, you know, the Revolutionary War era history, colonial history. Some of the things, when all else fails, you can go back to those old ways because they're still tried and true.
Yes.
When they, and you know, when they came, the expansion, and they came to the prairies and they migrated, they started coming out into the lands, they didn't have anything. They had to plant with what they had.
Right.
They didn't have tractors, and they built their homes with hand tools.
Yeah.
So it still works.
Sure.
That way still works when all else fails, or grids go down, or government corruption, whatever it may be. Those ways
We'll get you through.
will get you through, will get you to survive. And I hope all of you question everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Question the government. Don't say the government put out a book and this is what it says to do. Only follow this. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. The government used to tell pregnant women, and you know this in your field, to smoke cigarettes because it calmed the pregnant woman's nerves.
Right.
Years later, the science changes, as it always does. My bad.
Yeah.
It's not good. So don't believe the latest and greatest. Don't believe anything. Do your own research and use your own common sense.
Yeah. And surround yourself with
knowledgeable people
and friends, and you know, preferably people who have different skill sets than you. We all have a skill set. Sometimes it's got to be developed a little bit, but you know, we all have something, and you can share that and barter that out with your neighbors, your friends, people of like minds. That's all.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Wish you all the best of luck.
Yep. And keep on questioning. Peace out. Love y'all.